Welcome to Art, Music, and Movement. In this video, I'm going to be concentrating quite a bit on art activities because I think it's so important when it comes to childhood classrooms. Now, typically when you go into a classroom, art activities consist of something like make your own bunny. So take a look at this art activity. And I say that with a little trepidation, saying an art activity, but what you see here are two uh, craft projects that look almost completely the same. They have the same number of whiskers, same number of eyes in the same placement, same ears, same little pink thing. There's lots of pre-cut shapes you can see here. This is not what I would refer to as an art activity. You see these typically in a lot of classrooms. We call them cookie cutter art. They're very cute. They are usually seasonal. We do them for Thanksgiving. We do them for Christmas. But these activities all look the same. When you walk into a classroom, it's all the same. Now, the reason that we do this is it is a product-oriented art activity, which means that the end result looks like something grown-ups really like. But this isn't kid-centered art, nor is it really art. It's really following directions. If your goal is to have kids follow directions, maybe 2-step, 3-step directions, this is perfectly fine. But if your goal is to do an art activity, this doesn't qualify as art. Neither does drawing, does coloring in the pictures. All of these things are very adult-centered. Now, when we really talk about art activities, we want things to be open-ended. We want children to really be able to express themselves, to be able to use the mediums. And a lot of times children are much more interested in the process than they are in the actual product at the end. So, here we see the idea of using clay. Children paint all over themselves. They love the texture. And the end result might not be pleasing to adults, but this is what art is. Children expressing themselves, using materials, really getting their hands dirty and getting to explore. Now, some children may have sensory issues and may not like the feeling of the clay and the different things on their hands. And in which case we can always accommodate by giving them popsicle sticks or giving them paintbrushes. But really the idea is to have children explore. And when we do this, we find that children have a lot to say about what they're doing. They get very involved, very focused. Now, parents might look at this and really not understand it. So we want to make sure that we're talking to them about the fact that this is something that children go through when they're exploring activities. And for children, this is really an art activity. We have to also be careful that we don't step on kids' toes. So a lot of times we'll hand them pre-cut shapes. Why are we doing that? Why can't we let children rip and tear like you can see in the collages with the tissue paper? We can also let them make a mess with the cutting. The cutting doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to have a shape at the end. So the more that children have the ability to grab things, if you're giving them googly eyes, give them 20 googly eyes. If they're giving them pipe cleaners, give them 20 pipe cleaners. It may not look like what you want it to look like, but it will be interesting to the child. And that's really what this is about. We're trying to educate young children and let them have experiences. So when we look at art, this is a great quote. Teachers frequently encourage scribbling children to draw something real, to satisfy their own adult imaginations. Such imposition of ideas that are far beyond the abilities, the developmental stage of the child can be disastrous to their further development. So we really want them to take children where they are. And the one way we do that is by breaking down Scribble Scrabble. So this is something that you really frequently see little children doing, which is scribbling on a page. And there is a way that it progresses as children scribble. So the first is disordered. They're marking all over the place. It could be light, it could be dark, depending on the child. Also, how hard they're holding the crayon or they're holding the marker. And this is just making movements. They're not necessarily realizing that it's even going to end up in anything. So this is an example of some disordered scribble scrabble. And this is frequently what you see with very little children. Now, as they have more exposure, we get to see changes that go on. And one is called longitudinal Scribble Scrabble, and that's controlled repetition of movement. And this really has to do with the fact that they love the way it feels to move whatever medium they're doing, the crayon or the paint. And so here we can see an example where a child just loves the movement of the paintbrush and has just completely filled up the paper with lots of markings and that repetition of going back and forth with the brush as hard as they can. And here we see them doing dots. They're moving that bang, 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 bang onto the easel and really getting the feeling of the medium of the paint. The next is circular, where they're starting to realize that they can make shapes if they start to move their hand in certain directions. So this is an example of a circular drawing, and you see the start of those circles coming in. And here we also see when they make that repetitious movement and they like it, they like the result, and so they keep going. Now, one thing to notice here is someone has written on the front of the painting. We really discourage people from doing that. If you're going to write something on the painting, about the painting, write it on a separate piece of paper and put it next to the painting. That way you haven't written on someone else's painting. I know if I did something and I was extremely proud of it and someone came over and wrote on it, it would not make me feel good. So we really encourage teachers to write something separately and put it next to the painting. Now the next is naming, where the child tells a story about the scribble. So they're not just having that movement that they're really enjoying. Now they're starting to think about, could it be a picture? And usually this could happen after the fact, not usually before, but sometimes it happens before as well. So you can see here, it looks like a house. So after the child has done it, they say, oh, this is what it looks like. Now, we're sort of stopping here because the next stage starts to go into representational art. And we spend a lot of time trying to push kids into representational art. What is it? What are you trying to make? What does it look like? You say to a kid like, oh, what are you drawing? Is that your mother? Oh, what are you drawing? Is that your house? Well, most of the time it's not. And so then the children feel that they have to accommodate you, that it's not enough just to be moving. So what we want to do is we want to encourage them with the things that they say. So one of the things we can say is, what can you tell me about your artwork? This is an open-ended question. We're not saying, is that a house you're drawing? Is that a mommy? We're not doing any of that. We're not saying things like, oh, how pretty. Oh, I love it. Instead, we're saying really substantial things. How did you make it? This makes the child think about, did I use my hand in a circular motion? Am I doing this over and over again? Because a lot of times it's about the movement anyway. How did you get your ideas? Why did you choose this color? Why did you choose this shape? What is the favorite part of your work? So instead of labeling it, what did you draw? Instead, we're asking these open-ended questions, and we're going to get a lot more discussion about their process. And that's really what we're trying to encourage in terms of young children's work. So as you make your way through this module, think about ways that we can encourage children developmentally, not pushing them towards representational art, not pushing them to product-oriented art, but instead taking them where they are and encouraging all the stages of art that we're seeing in young children.